fueled by energetic fans, entertaining halftime shows, fierce rivalries, and celebrated victories or devastating losses. Football draws people to the game, which has been played since the 1860s. At Furman University, the football program has changed significantly throughout its long history.
Furman fielded its first team against Wofford on December 14, 1889, making this matchup one of the oldest Deep South rivalries and the first football game to be played in South Carolina. Furman took the field for 31 games from 1889 to 1902, an average of 2 to 3 games per season. Then Furman found itself in a win-loss situation known as the Purple Fighters in 1902. Furman won a victory against a more dominant team from the University of South Carolina. However, due to safety concerns, football was abolished by the Board of Trustees after that season. Furman football was benched from play from 1903 to 1912. However, Dr. E.M. Poteet, president of the university, responded to the student body, who appealed for football games to resume for the 1913 season. Dr. Poteet also penned Furman's alma mater sung at every football game since. In the 1920s, Furman possessed a dominant team under the leadership of Coach Billy Laval. The Purple Hurricane, as they were known, defeated Clemson University in 1920, posted 10-1 records in 1923 and 1927, and in 1925 won the South Carolina State Championship.
Throughout the 1930s to the 1960s, Furman football struggled to post winning seasons. In an effort to improve its image, in 1961, by a vote of the student body, the team was renamed the Purple Paladins. But they still played in the old rock stadium, known as Serene Stadium in downtown Greenville.
But when I was there, the stadium was all the way across town. So it was almost like every game was an away game, because we had to go to the field house on campus and get taped and get dressed and ready. Then we had to get on a bus, and we took about a 25-minute bus ride across town to get to the Serene Stadium where Furman played. The dressing facilities there were not really good. People call them the stables because it looked more like a stable than it looked like a dressing room. They have replaced those with much more modern facility now since Greenville High School has that stadium.
The hiring of Art Baker in 1973 proved to be the initial turning point of successful football program.
I coached in high school for 9 years, and Coach Art Baker, who I was a part of his staff in high school, got the Furman job, and he asked me to be his assistant. And so I came to Furman first as an assistant coach, and then when Art Baker left to go to coach the Citadel, I was able to get the head job.
With the new coach came a new look.
Steve came up with the idea that if you're familiar with the Pittsburgh Steelers helmet, it's got 3 little diamonds on the helmet. And he said, why don't we put a 4-point star? And so Coach Baker said, yeah, I like that. And he asked me, because I did a little art stuff, to draw it up. So I drew it up, so it was a team effort, just like everything in football is. Coach Baker, Coach Robertson, and me. But Coach Robertson's idea led to the Diamond F.
In the late 1970s, the program continued its success when Coach Dick Sheridan was named head coach.
Well, success is, there's so many legs to that stool. You have to have an outstanding staff, a cohesive staff, people that believe in the same things. And so I would first have to mention I have an outstanding staff of coaches. And the second thing is we were able to recruit a group of young men who not only succeeded academically, but it's obvious they succeeded athletically. And so at Furman, you don't get the most highly recruited players. And so most all of our players were part scholarship players. They had to pay something to come to us. And a lot of non-scholarship players. So having potential was a big part of that. You know, the players that could get better and had the work ethic to do that. and had the potential to become a better player. And I had someone ask me one time, how were you able to beat all those large schools, when they had 40 more scholarships? And I said, well, we had better players. And they look at me like I'm crazy. They were not the best players as seniors in high school, but as juniors and seniors in college, because of their work ethic and the job my coaches did is improving them, they were better players. And so you don't beat teams like that unless you have players that can compete, and our players could do that because they worked hard.
In 8 seasons, Coach Sheridan directed the players to a 69-23 record, leading the Paladins to their first Southern Conference championship and getting a bid to the National Championship in 1985. One of Sheridan's greatest impacts on the program was the building of the stadium on Furman's campus.
When I first went to Furman in the first 2 years as head coach, we played in Serene Stadium where Greenville High plays now. It was not the best of places. And there was a lot of the teams that we played would complain about the stadium and the dressing rooms and all that. It's a lot better now than it was. So we probably had the worst stadium to play in surely in our conference and maybe in the country. And when we won the first championship, it was the first one, as I mentioned, in 50 years, it was the stimulus to get people behind an effort to raise money to build a new stadium on campus. And it was really a lot of fun to be part of that, to help plan and develop and design the stadium on campus. It helped our attendance, it helped us in recruiting, helped in so many ways. The stadium on campus at Furman was one of the achievements that our coaching staff and players, I think, can be most proud of.
Coach Sheridan elevated the team's status in college football with his winning teams. However, his relationship with the players was crucial to their success.
That's one of the most important things you need, is the trust of the players. And I think by showing them through leadership that what you're doing is in their best interest. It's not only you, but it's the whole staff. It can't be just the head coach. You have to treat players. One of the things I would tell my staff is that we're going to coach our players like we'd want our own sons coached. And that's sort of a guideline that I would put in place of my staff.
My mind was on, that's your dad, he's the head football coach. And, going to the national championship. And back in the day, we didn't have a national championship, and we grew to that. And then for Furman to actually compete for the national championship was just amazing. Well, we were in 2. So with my dad coaching, we made the national, the finals, and they lost, unfortunately. But then 2 years later, 3 years later, we won the national championship with the coach that succeeded my dad. Furman was 2,500 students, and we're competing with people that are 10 times bigger than us, even on our level. So the fact that we could do it with less scholarships and less pool to pull from was a testament to the coaching staff. Absolutely. And what they could do with the athletes that we had. So Furman is super unique in that way, and elite in that way.
Furman's got such a great history of great coaches, national championship teams, Southern Conference championships. So obviously I wanted to come here and kind of follow in the footsteps of guys like him. Dick Sheridan, Robbie Caldwell, Bobby Johnson, and Coach Hendricks. And it's tough because you've got that big legacy to try to live up to, but at the same time, it is pretty cool knowing that these great guys laid this foundation here at Furman for us. But at the end of the day, all you can really do is just do your best and work as hard as you can, and hopefully at the end of the day, that's enough to try to follow in those footsteps.
You do feel that legacy. When I played at Furman, every coach was a Furman player, Furman alumni, Furman graduate. Coach Satterfield coached under Coach Sheridan. Coach Hendricks played for Coach Sheridan and coached under Coach Sheridan. And Coach Hendricks would talk about Coach Sheridan. Apparently there was a sweep play that was always the very first play that they ran every game, and there was sort of a running joke about that. And so all of the coaches that were there when I was there played for or coached with Coach Sheridan. So you could just, his stamp was all over everything and everybody.
Winning excited the fans. Several football game day traditions were added in the 1970s. Pre-game traditions include the ringing of the Carillon bells and the Paladin March.
You've been at Furman, there's the bell tower. So the bell tower is a staple at Furman. And so the bell tower isn't necessarily ringing to open up the game, but we're able to ring that bell and ring it around those who are tailgating. So there's not necessarily a specific story that I was told, but as far as I would tie it to the bell tower and that being something that's a staple at Furman and ringing the bell to let everybody know it's game time, guys.
We would start from our locker room, and we would walk in a single file line as a team with our helmets and shoulder pads in one hand and jerseys and everything on. And fans would come and gather and shake our hands, give us high fives, pat us on the back. And so as you got closer and closer to the stadium, you know, the nerves got a little bit more active, and you knew it was game time and time to kick off.
Excitement permeates the fan base when the Paladin mascot gallops onto the field, followed by the coaches and players. The band gets the crowd to their feet.
Our mascot at the university is a paladin.
The paladin is a knight on horseback, but one who is described as being particularly virtuous and always fighting for the good. So that's sort of the essence of the paladin. That's what the team represents.
We do something called the Paladin Walk. So the whole band marches through the university, and then we meet at the Hat Circle. It's a circle outside of one of the university buildings, and we play pep tunes for fans. So it's some of the stuff that we'll play in the stands. And then after we do that, we march into the stadium, and we play pregame. So it's some of the Furman fight songs and stuff like that.
The pregame show starts with we come in, we play a fanfare, and then march the Block F across the field to the fight song. And then we play a section of Game of Thrones. And then we do the America the Beautiful, which goes into our national anthem. Then we play our other fight song, which is called a victory song, which helps us form into the funnel formation when the team runs out. The fight song is based on a march. It's not a tune that's recognizable like Clemson's is with a tiger rag. This is basically taken from something that somebody heard many years ago, and they fashioned it into the Furman fight song.
It just kind of gets you fired up. It's the same as tiger rag for Clemson fans, and it just takes you back to that time when you were an athlete and you were strong and you could do just about whatever you wanted to do.
Once we started out onto the field, it was, I'm not sure how to describe it. It was really, really exciting. There was so much music is going and the people are cheering, and it's just a very exciting thing.
After pregame, then we head to our spot in the stands, and we watch the football game. And then when it comes halftime, we do our halftime performance.
The band, cheerleaders, and mascots keep the fans going throughout the games.
Very conservative. They're not very rowdy. They're not very vocal, except in crunch time. Except when we actually would have people stand up. It was a big deal to get Furman fans to stand up. The expression goes, rise to the occasion. Furman fans do. But other than that, they're very conservative and laid back. But in the heat of the moment, they will get behind us.
So Furman played at Elon University in North Carolina this past weekend, and it's a football playoff game. Did not have as many fans as the Elon folks did, But it was a really close game, and our fans were much louder than Elon fans. You know, they stood up and they yelled, especially when the team needed them on defense. They were great at making noise.
See, that's exactly what we're talking about. And they rise to the occasion, and I think they won by 1 point.
Yep.
So it was tight, and I was proud of Furman, to the athletes, of course, but the fans too, to rise to the occasion.
Because I think it does make a difference.
It does. You feel it.
Yeah. It changes the energy in the stadium.
We're there to pump up the crowd. I feel like the football team wins because we're there. I'm just kidding. But I do believe that we are able to play some major contribution in creating the atmosphere, knowing when it does feel dead, and that we need to kind of crank it up so that we can get that excitement going. Because the guys can feel it too. They can feel when it's really low in the audience or in the crowd, and they want to be pumped up too, especially when they feel like things are not going their way on the field. There's always hope to turn around the game. Even though there might be low points and the crowd may not be excited, you can't let your attitude be dictated by what's going on in the crowd. So you have to keep up the enthusiasm and the excitement even when everyone else is low.
Dr. Johns was the president of Furman, and if Furman was ever needing a big play and we were behind, the whole student section, the cheerleaders would lead them and say, we're going to call Dr. John. They'd say, hey, Dr. Johns, come on down. And you look up at the press box, and we were waiting to see his hand come out to signal that he heard us and he was going to come. And if he didn't do it, the crowd got louder, and they changed it again. The cheerleaders would lead the chant. It would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And finally, you'd see a little hand, and that was the signal he was coming. And he'd come down, and he led the whole stadium in a big cheer to get the team riled up. And it usually worked, and we usually won. At the old stadium, every time we scored a touchdown, we had a Paladin as our mascot. The horse and rider would run down the sideline every time you scored a touchdown.
Back when I was coaching, we played Carolina, we played Clemson, we played Georgia Tech, we played NC State. And as a small school, we had 55 scholarships, and all those schools had 95. So it was a real challenge to play those teams. And we were fortunate enough in my last 4 years at Furman, we beat South Carolina, we beat Georgia Tech, and we beat NC State twice. The contribution of the cheerleaders and the band and the fans have a great effect, and we appreciated that kind of support.
When Coach Jimmy Satterfield took over in 1986, expectations were high. He stated in an interview that this is somewhat of a rebuilding season. My goal is to win the conference and compete for the national championship. It took him 2 more seasons to accomplish this goal.
Jimmy Satterfield was the head coach, and he was a good head coach. He was a good leader. He had a man of faith, and he shared that faith with them.
The Paladin fans were elated by the 1988 national championship win.
Over the years, the players have changed in size, ability, strength, and competence, all while focusing on being a student athlete.
When I played, our offensive line, we averaged about 250 pounds a person. Now they average more like 285 pounds a person. So if I were coming along today, I would either have to find a different position to play or not be able to play.
Now they have concussion protocol, which if someone gets a lick to the head, they have all these measures that they take. Back when I played, there was no such thing, and people would get knocked out or knocked silly, as some would call it, and they'd be back in playing later on if they could, which you didn't have to sit out. So that was kind of tough. Also, when I played, if you had a knee injury, now they do a orthoscopic surgery, which is not very invasive, and a lot of times they can be back playing before the season's out. But when I played, they had to cut you, and you had a long scar, and it was usually a season-ending injury.
If we have a lift, we usually wake up before 6 o'clock, and we're seen to go at a workout at 6:30 and before classes, you know. So you're waking up before the sun's ever up, and you're done working out before the sun's ever up, and then you have to go eat before classes, and it's a tough schedule, but I mean it's definitely worth it at the end of the day, because you know you see the time that you put in it, and especially this year having a good outcome and a good run in the playoffs, it was definitely worth the grind. So I would say it's a grind.
The football playing gear has also been tweaked since football's arrival at Furman.
Bobby Johnson, Furman basketball and football coach, as well as athletic director, led the team to 2 more conference titles and another bid to the national championship game.
When I first got here, the Coach Bobby Johnson at Furman, we had a nice run of playoff appearances, so that he was a big influence on the success of both the band and the football team. Bobby Lamb took over for him, and we went to several playoff games after that.
After 7 more Southern Conference championships under coaches Bobby Lamb and Bruce Fowler, the Furman Paladins are now led by Coach Clay Hendricks, a former Paladin standout player.
I came in with Coach Hendricks. We're all part of a new staff. Our football philosophy is we want to recruit and have players that academics are important to them. A true student athlete. We want to develop the whole person. So it's not just about football here. It's about academics, what their life after football is going to be like. As far as football, X's and O's. I'm an offensive line coach, so I like to run the football and go attack people, be aggressive.
I think it was the perfect hire for Furman. Clay Hendricks was my position coach when I was there, and he was a great coach. He actually played at Furman. He was all conference at Furman. They played for a national championship. They didn't win. 3 years later, he coached for a national championship that they did win. And then he became our offensive line coach, and he was there for several years till the mid-2000s, and he went to the Air Force Academy and was the offensive line coach and became this assistant head coach there. And he's known for his running attack and his running schemes. He is going to bring that back to Furman with a sort of I think his days at the Air Force gave him sort of a military attitude, an attitude of structure. And so it's already paying dividends. Our first 3 games, we lost this year. We lost to Wofford by 1, Elon by 3, and then North Carolina State, but they're supposed to beat us. We got everything right and won 7 in a row and ended up making the playoffs. So I think Furman is returning to its glory days.
Coach Hendricks coming in, he was a former player, and Coach Quarles, he was a former player. They just brought back that energy, and they were 2 of the guys that were there when they won the national championship. Them being able to bring that energy back and just show us what Furman football is all about. It's just they've reinstated what was there, and that's our goal every year, is to go for that conference championship, and that's their tradition, and that's what we're going to keep relying on. He talked a lot about changing our culture and building up our own culture, and that's a lot to do with a football team and a team being together. And I think he's really brought our team together. We've, outside of football, we've done a lot of things, football-wise, just being together and building that culture as a football team, and creating that atmosphere with each other, just being together and doing everything for one another. And Coach Hendricks brought a lot of structure, I would say, to our football team.
And with a winning tradition behind them, every fall Saturday, screaming purple-clad fans cheer on the Paladins as they take the field.
Once you're done warming up, you go back inside to put on strap on your pads, and you come out, and it's within like 15 minutes. You come out there, and the stands, especially this year when we went on a winning streak, the stands are totally filled up. And the fans, and we have a student section over there to the side. They're ready to go. They're ready for some football, just like we are. So it's really exciting to come out there and see all our fans, and just being able to have that hype for us, and it helps us to create energy. You can definitely tell there's a football atmosphere, just like you see at Clemson.
There is a legacy, a history, a family, so to speak.
The Paladin football program, improved throughout history, gallops on to a new century of conquest.